Next, it's back on the road we go, using the A1, A1M and other roads so as to give Leicester a wide berth. Maybe a slight break in the journey in the County Durham area for the restorative effect of the local waters on the eyesight might be in order, if only we were allowed to go. We will of course be hosted by Newcastle United. Kick-off on Sunday is 2:15 p.m, or, if you use the same facilities as Mr Howlett, 8 p.m. The game is on Sky. Apparently, although pubs such as the Swan and Super in Junction may well be open, they're likely to be barred from showing the match, so get yourself down the offie is my advice. This may well be the last time I have to point out to the geographically challenged up there that owner Mike Ashley is not a Cockney. Or maybe not. The proposed change in ownership seems to have hit a snag in the fit and proper part of the equation, as Saudi Arabia's somewhat iffy reputation for human rights compliance comes under scrutiny. I do have some sympathy for the committee. With Manchester City already on board from that part of the world, exactly how do you go about determining whether it is better or worse to have a journalist murdered, or to have him imprisoned without trial, periodically letting him emerge to have parts of his body introduced to the local national grid? It's a tough one, to be sure. Meanwhile, on football matters, since the return from the wilderness, they're unbeaten in the league, having beaten Sheffield United 3-0 at home, subject obviously to appeal, drawn 1-1 with Villa at the same venue, then, in midweek, making the trek down to Bournemouth, where they coasted to a 4-1 victory over the Cherries. Somewhere in all that, they did lose a cup quarter-final, going down 2-0 at home to Man City, in a match that was a lot more comfortable for the visitors than the scoreline suggests. At one stage, the TV company's Department of Pointless Statistics came up with some figures that suggested the only touch they had of the ball was from the kick-off after De Bruyne had opened the scoring with a penalty. All of this has left them in 13th position, with 42 points from the 32 games played so far. This is safe enough from the perils that lie below for manager Steve Bruce to be spinning himself out as some sort of new coaching genius, presumably with the intention of not being first out of the door if the new owners start thinking of employing a real coaching genius. That's if they're allowed to take time out from reducing the journalist population to take over the club, of course. Daisy, the socially bubbled personal assistant with the beautiful smile, informs me that all the winter transfer activity centred on the loan market. In came midfielder Nabil Bentaleb, whose surname always reminds me of a proprietary type of asthma medication. As far as I'm aware, the player doesn't actually have asthma, but he has overcome the tragedy of having played for Tottenham. He left there for our friends in Gelsenkirchen in 2016, originally signing for Schalke on a season-long loan, a deal that was made permanent a year later. During his spell at Schalke, he became the first player in the Bundesliga to have a goal confirmed by goal line technology, and nobody can take that away from him. His time in Germany went sour when he was dropped to the under-23 squad after ignoring instructions to turn up at the ground for a match for which he was injured, electing instead to go and visit his wife, who was in hospital at the time. He did make a brief return to first 11 action, but then missed a language session, which prompted another return to the Stiffs. In amongst all that, there had been rumours of tactical disagreements with the coaching staff, so it wasn't much of a surprise to see him depart on loan, with the Geordies having an option to purchase at the end of the season, which on current estimates will end sometime in 2025. The next arrival was an Austrian with the decidedly un-Teutonic-sounding name of Valentino Nazaro. The 1930s-style Portuguese crooner-style name can be traced back to his dad's side of the family, who hail from Angola. The Graz-born midfielder started his career at RB Salzburg, during which time he became the Austrian Bundesliga's youngest ever player, which, as a claim to fame, probably trumps Bentaleb's goal-line technology claim, should they ever get round to a spot of changing room one-upmanship. After Salzburg, he spent a couple of years at Hertha Berlin before pitching up on the other side of the Alps at Inter last July. However, he's found first-team action at the San Siro limited, so he was sent to Tyneside to get a bit of game time. Like Bentaleb, Danny Rose has also suffered from being at Spurs. He has had a few injury problems and, though recovered, at the start of this season he was left out of the pre-season squad, with a rather tersely worded statement coming out of the toilet bowl to the effect that he was being given time to explore prospective opportunities with other clubs, which sounds a lot like the leaving to spend more time with the family excuse, often given by members of Parliament when their chief whip has discovered a skeleton or two in the cupboard. Nobody came in for Rose during the summer, But clearly neither club nor player were happy with each other, so it was probably not the hardest decision in the world for the player to make when the Geordies offered him a loan spell, which, it has turned out, has lasted a lot longer than anyone had anticipated. The post-lockdown form horse has been French winger Alain Saint-Maximin. He has an abundance of pace and was instrumental in setting up 3 of their 4 goals at Bournemouth the other night. One of those was the effort dispatched by youngster Sean Longstaff. The Rest Home's resident Geordie, Preview Alistair, was watching that match accompanied by his son, who, a mere minute before Longstaff's goal, stuck a few bob on the player to score using the Winston Turf Accountancy app on his mobile telephonic device. Given that the odds were 25-1 at that point, his winnings probably earned him enough to buy him a few bottles of that hideously expensive strawberry-flavoured beer that he insists on drinking mainly to embarrass his father. And believe me, his father's not one who embarrasses easily. The goal was pretty much Longstaff's last contribution to the proceedings, having picked up a knock that curtailed his evening. He's a doubt for Saturday, as is striker Joe Linton, who is rated 50-50. We may therefore see something of former Hammer and now Lemmy tribute act Andy Carroll. Carroll, whose facial hair must surely be some sort of yellow card offence, has yet to score for the Magpies, which, of course, makes him short odds to open his account this weekend. I'm guessing if you stick a few bob on that, you might win enough to buy a proper non-embarrassing proper beer. And so we move on to the wild and wacky world of association football. Liverpool was saved from a 5-0 defeat only by VAR the other night. However, the defeat, as it was probably enough to see thousands go into mourning, as their long ball game was decidedly second best to Manchester City's more pleasing to the eye passing game. Given that Man City's focus has been on the so-called Champions League this term, and given that they may not have that distraction next time, I can see the BBC resetting the years of hurt counter back to 1 very shortly. VAR also reared its ugly head in a number of other games, including ours. I've said it before and I'll say it again. VAR is not a problem as long as those operating it know what they're doing. Leaving it in the hands of a group of referees who you wouldn't trust to sit the right way up on a toilet seat was always going to result in disaster, wasn't it? And what, you may ask, happened to the idiot who said he'd reviewed Spurs' first goal against us through VAR? Suspension? A fine? Perhaps reminded of his responsibilities? Of course not. He was sent away to do Everton versus Leicester. I am not one of those who doesn't like to say I told you so, because I did. Of course, we've now got to the stage whereby, whenever a PGMOL official cocks up, they issue a statement to defend the decision. The player was in the keeper's eye line announcement was an insult to one's intelligence. Come on, guys, if you have to lie, at least make it plausible. Up to that point, on Wednesday, we hadn't won a point from going 1-0 down all season. And in our current position, that sort of decision could have cost us dearly. However, it was pleasing in the extreme to see the players knuckling down and working their socks off. Something that, in certain players, has been all too lacking since the comeback. Even Lanzini, whose creative contribution may have been limited, put in a shift and was seen trying to tackle back on numerous occasions. I'm afraid that injury to Noble may have been one of those occasions where we've hit on a good lineup by accident. The resulting pairing of Souček and Rice in the middle worked wonders, and it may be the untimely intervention of a hamstring that ultimately sees the end of the skipper's tenure as first name on the tee-sheet. Talking of skippers, Rice's leadership was excellent. Always good to see a youngster with the bottle to boss senior pros about. Rice, of course, was one of the players who picked up a yellow, but the officiating was such that I rather got the impression that nothing short of a spell of serial killing would see a Chelsea player enter the book. Alonso's nasty rake of the studs down the back of Bowen's calf may have deserved even more than the yellow that it inexplicably avoided, for example. So, good performances all round then, which would have done wonders for morale about the place. Of course, this is West Ham, and every good thing seems to be accompanied by some form of karmic counterbalance, lest we spend too much time with smiles on our faces. Which brings us to what I shall refer to as Hallergate. It seems we didn't quite get around to making May's £5.4 million instalment payment to Eintracht. The club denied that this had anything to do with cash flow, and was the result purely of a contractual issue between the two clubs. I'm not sure I buy that, to be honest. All seems a bit convenient at a time when there's no cash coming in and when there are season ticket refunds to shell out for. We shall see. Haller is rated 50-50 at the time of writing for this match, as are the aforementioned Noble, Masuaku and Anderson, who bizarrely managed to pick up a strain on Wednesday whilst warming up for a game he took no part in. Prediction? Well, how typical would it be to follow up Wednesday with a stinker? However, never underestimate the power of a good result from a feel-good perspective. A point would not be the worst result in the world at the moment, and a point is what I think we will get. So, Mr. Winston, when you've finished paying out money for strawberry flavoured beer, please place the £2.50 that I was going to spend on sending a condolences card up to Liverpool on a 1-1 draw. Enjoy the game, everyone.